until 2025, the price of Bitcoin correlated with known reports of physical attacks, but since 2025, it's decoupled.
The idea is in the bear market, the risk level is not as urgent.
It used to be like that, not anymore. I think criminals realize that Bitcoin is here to stay, it has value, and it doesn't matter whether it's pumping or dumping. A lot of people think that, oh, this is something only concerning Bitcoiners. That's also another false idea, because we've seen wealthy people who have not touched Bitcoin or crypto before, and they have been pressured and kidnapped. In this room, there's a couple of people for sure that have been hacked.
Thank you, Stefan. Great introductions. Welcome, everybody, to this panel, AI, Quantum, and Other Threats. Really just going to now open it up to the panel here. Just get started. So Alena is founder of Gart, and the question I want to start off with you first is from the Gart trenches, what would be the most overlooked OPSEC mistake that you see Bitcoin holders, that you see them making, and what does it cost them?
I think that a lot of people that are in the space, whether short or long, have invested a ton of time to educate themselves on Bitcoin security, how to secure coins and keys, and they have wallets, maybe multi-sig setups, maybe Shamir secret sharing, all these technicalities to secure the coins, but they forgot that without securing life, their coins will not be safe. So physical security and physical safety comes first, and then you can talk about securing what you own, right? So this is one thing that I think this is a good time. We have bear market now. Bear markets are great to improve your safety, security, your setups, and get ready for for what's coming. And this is one thing that is most striking, even among experienced users, I would say.
Okay, yeah. So the idea is in the bear market, the risk level is not as urgent.
It used to be like that, not anymore. So until 2025, the price of Bitcoin correlated with known reports of physical attacks. But since 2025, it's decoupled, basically. And now I think criminals realize that Bitcoin is here to stay, it has value, and it doesn't matter whether it's pumping or dumping. It's a Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are a perfect tool to extract savings from people, and that's what they're starting to do. A lot of people think that, oh, this is something only concerning Bitcoiners, and that's also another false idea, because we've seen wealthy people who have not touched Bitcoin or crypto before, and they have been pressured and kidnapped or extorted through cryptocurrency. So it's something that is growing, evolving really fast, and with all the new tools like AI, it's really exploding.
Thank you. Luke, so you recently wrote this book, Defending Bitcoin. Congratulations. Why don't you just let us know what's top of mind, threat to Bitcoin, top of mind?
Okay, that's a complicated question to start out, but yes, okay. So I've written a book on Bitcoin security as my way of bridging my fiat life, fiat career, which is I still work in cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, industrial control systems. And the thing that I learned through the course of writing this book was that there's always something you can do, that every individual can do, no matter what aspect of security we're talking about. When you're talking about your own personal security, getting your keys, getting your coins off an exchange and taking self-custody, that's one step, and that's in your control. But then you have all the responsibility. And if you do it wrong, basically like what Alena was saying, you can open yourself up to big risk of physical attacks and threats like this. But the individual side of Bitcoin is only one aspect, right? The Bitcoin, the network, also it's a system, it's a software system, and there are people doing fantastic work on updating the node softwares, on making mining more accessible. And so the overall picture for me is that complacency is the biggest threat to Bitcoin. That those who are simply getting into Bitcoin and taking their coins and all this, but you don't pay attention to what's going on in the network. If everyone does that, then we trend towards decentralizing forces, whether that's in node implementations or whether that's in mining. Right now, mining centralization is maybe the current top of mind threat because there's a pool which has over 30% of the hash rate right now, and there are nasty things you can do if you get more than that. And so, just getting involved and doing what you can is what I advocate people to do. And the biggest threat is those of us who are in the Bitcoin community and bringing people into Bitcoin not thinking about these things.
Yeah, so when you say complacency, what I hear is like complacency is the first step to a loss of conviction. And right, because maintaining conviction requires constant motion. So maybe complacency is sort of that first, you let go of the rope a little bit, and then you're just on your way to losing conviction.
Sure, and I more mean about the staying aware what's going on and staying current and up to date, because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the threats that we're talking about here with quantum and AI, I consider those to be kind of emerging things that we don't fully understand the picture. It's all happening right now. Stuff is moving fast, right? And so stay aware and be able to understand when maybe you might want to get involved and do your part for the network. But Bitcoin is money with responsibility. We can't get away from that. You either give the responsibility to someone else, a trusted third party, and that has trade-offs, or you take responsibility yourself, and that comes with needing to stay aware. And so I hope that people take security seriously and do what they can. It's not hard. It's not all of it's hard. You can get started really easily and do what you can for the network.
Thanks. So Jan, you're the head of security at Trezor, and so the question here is, first of all, how does Trezor? It's really fascinating to have a company now, a wallet company. How do you guys govern AI now internally, and how do you guys use AI to maybe find vulnerabilities?
Right. So AI is a big topic with us. People coming up with ideas how to utilize AI every day, which is great, but also worrying for me as the head of security. And what adds to the nightmare, we've come up with a policy we call unlimited AI budget for people to experiment with the tools. We let people to use whatever they find is good for the task. So we have been using Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, all that stuff, which do the same thing. But we need to figure out which one does it best, and it keeps changing, because it's evolving that rapidly. That doesn't mean we don't do security reviews, but it's a lot currently. This is, of course, at some point about to change because it's also very costly, the tokens costs and the subscription costs, and the environment in the market isn't the best currently, so we can't keep it up indefinitely. We always prioritize for tools that allow us for some top-level governance, so we can have some admin profiles and set some settings for everyone to use. And then we have guidelines for people so that they only use the tools that have been approved, and they only use their company accounts so that they cannot bypass these settings. Sometimes people get annoyed when they cannot use certain commands, or they have to confirm them manually every time during the development. But yeah, that's part of the deal.
Have you guys found any vulnerabilities with AI that you guys are like, oh my God, this would have taken years, if ever, to find this?
Yes, we have. Not only us. So first off, we use the first level where we employ AI during development. Besides development itself, is automated AI reviews in the repository. Then second level, actually, we have reviews that are kind of behind the scenes so that not even the developer can see the results of this review. It is used just in case a developer's account is compromised, or maybe it's a rogue developer contributing to the AI. And then third level, automated scans on the repos. And we also get we also get reports from external researchers, because we have a bug bounty program. Anyone can approach us and report a vulnerability they find in our code. And if we accept the vulnerability, we pay out a reward, which can be up to $100,000, by the way. And recently, we have seen a big surge in these reports. People do use AI, and they found a lot of relevant stuff. It's actually quite a lot of workload for us to deal with these reports, but they're great, so keep them coming. Sometimes people automate a lot of things, so not only the scanning, but also the emailing. So sometimes we have to deal with bots because they ask us for updates and whether we can pay a bigger bounty, perhaps. So this is quite a challenge for us. But so far, it's been great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's just cool to think about open source, like the age of open source software we're in now with AI. That now so many eyes are going to be on this stuff, and it's a
I
cool thing to
wonder
think about.
where it hits a threshold where humans are not capable of validating it anymore. The amount of data generated by AI seems massive already, and you say you're struggling with answering to that. So are you planning some AI agents to handle that?
Exactly. Well, not to handle communication, but to review these reports and maybe compare them to previous ones. We do have agents for that already.
Yeah, we should talk.
Okay.
Wasn't it the case that the traffic on the internet is now more AI than human for the first time? And this was fairly recent that this came out, and probably only going to continue, and the gap is going to increase, right?
It's fascinating. So internet traffic is like on-chain usage at the moment. It's in the minority.
Something like that.
All right, we're gonna move. Let's move on to everybody's least favorite topic, which is quantum. The thing is, so I want to just put some contextualization in here. When we talk about threats, I like to think first, like the first question is the sky falling? And I think that's something that gets lost, I think, in a lot of these discussions, where people just assume the sky is falling. People assume we have an existential threat, and sometimes things come along, ideas come along like quantum, that it's pretty reasonable it would be reasonable for one to think it's existential. But I just want to have that in the sort of in the background. Where are you guys in terms of the quantum threat? Now, I understand maybe if you represent a company that has a responsibility, that's going to be different from how I think about it as an individual. But I'm now put that out to you guys.
Well, I can just comment on that your sky is falling point. In the cybersecurity industry, the definition of risk is likelihood times impact. In other words, how likely is something to occur, and how bad is it going to be if it happens. And
in the insurance world, that's frequency and severity.
Exactly. Right? We just use some different words for that, right? And the thing here is that quantum, if it happens, that's a critical scenario, or like the highest level of bad. It's the equivalent to a meteor following on us, something like this, or at least that's so they say. But the likelihood is even debatable, right? Is quantum something that is going to happen immediately. I think that's extremely unlikely. But also, is it ever going to happen? It's possible that quantum never actually gets where the fudsters like the Nick Carters are thinking it will, right? But the thing with risk management is that it's always good to be able to tackle those high criticality issues and try to reduce the impact if it were to occur. So even if quantum, and this is funny, right? Even if quantum happens or it doesn't, either or, doing something about it is probably a good idea.
And there's a rigorous framing for what that means. What does it mean that if quantum happens? It's more than just a binary state of yes or no. It's like, do there exist quantum computers that can, on an economic basis, actually be deployed enough to break Bitcoin's cryptography, at the impact, like say to move Satoshi's keys, or something like that. Like I think it's good to also just instill a little bit of a rigor in, what does it even mean for the event to happen, especially if it's supposed to be this existential.
Okay, I agree with Luke 100%. On the personal level, not speaking about Trezor, I think we should take it seriously too. The most optimistic scenarios that are being talked about is that quantum will become cryptographically relevant in 5 years or so. We don't know if that is true, but I think we should get ready. So one thing an individual could do, perhaps, would be consider not using Taproot addresses that are more vulnerable to quantum. So unless you really need them for some special use case, why not use SegWit? It doesn't cost anything. So that's something I consider. So when I stack Bitcoin, I would prefer those addresses. That's what we still have as default in Trezor. And then as a company, we're also getting ready, and we also take it seriously whenever we work on some feature that is based on cryptography. We always ask ourselves, is this quantum ready or not? And you may have seen those quantum ready stickers that we put on Trezor Safe 7. That is because this is a product that is ready for that era. That means in the board loader, which is a part of the Trezor that is installed in the factory and can never be upgraded, we check signature of the firmware, that the firmware running on the device is genuine. And here we use a quantum-proof signature along with a traditional elliptic curve signature. So that when this happens in 5, 10, or 20 years, you can still be sure that the upgrade you're installing is safe. So this is a good marketing message because we can use these cool quantum-ready stickers, but also it is real, and it is a part of conversation for all other future features as well.
You want something from me on quantum computing? I don't understand it.
It's good.
And I'm going personally between extremely optimistic and extremely pessimistic, depending on the day. I'll leave it up to experts in cryptography to make Bitcoin quantum proof. I'm hoping that they will, and smart people around them, that they will help. And until then, I'm a user, living on the hope in this regards.
What I'm concerned about is that we're overemphasizing quantum and almost crowding out all other risks because we're obsessed with this one thing. In the United States, where I'm from, there used to be this issue with plastic, and they identified this element in plastic called BPA. And, they started making all these BPA-free plastic containers, and so everyone's supposed to be very comfortable now that their plastic containers are safe because they've removed this one thing that everybody's focused on. And so, that's my big fear about quantum is that it actually takes our eye off of what I would call real risks that really do exist today in the world. I'm of the personal belief that cryptography will be broken by a conventional computer. And that will happen before there exists a quantum computer. But I don't know if that's true, but I subscribe to that framing because that framing keeps my eye on that could happen tomorrow, right? And so do we have a game plan for what we do with cryptography if that happens tomorrow? That framing keeps my eye on that ball without necessarily overemphasizing, what might happen with a quantum computer. And there's a lot, and so that's just the fear I have is that it just crowds out all of the other potential risks. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah. And the real risk today is, I'm circling back to AI and the deepfakes. In this room, there's a couple of people for sure that have been hacked, and I have friends who are veterans, you could call them, and they still fell for AI deepfakes. They are spilling over. So there's 2023, there was around, let me see, I have this internal manual here about that, about 500,000 online deepfakes. Last year, it was 8 million. So it's expanding by about 900% a year. And soon enough, we will not know to distinguish reality from a fake. And so focusing, for example, on that, how to verify that you're talking to the person you actually think you're talking to. I think that's a very practical thing that we can do, everyone can do today. And the way to that verification, unfortunately, is not in the digital world. Because soon enough, you cannot trust anything in the digital world. So what we do with Gart, we do trainings of people in the space. Amongst others, we teach them how to do out-of-bound verification, real-life verification. So, for example, with your family, you can have common, experiences, jokes, movies that you like, and when you're calling with each other, just a quick hint on that and getting the right response from the person tells you yes, this is indeed my daughter or my mom talking. This is what I would focus on. It's as you say, that's the reality right now.
It's like we can't solve the problems with the same tools that we created the problem with. We have to go outside.
True, exactly. Yeah.
One, just to add on to this in terms of the contextualization, in my book Defending Bitcoin, which is about the threats to Bitcoin and what we can do about it, quantum is 2/3 of one chapter, and I have 10 chapters on all the threats, the threat landscape, right? So quantum is one part, and AI is the other third of that same chapter, So
doing the math, that's 1/15 of your book.
Well, 10 threat chapters. So it's exactly 1/15 of that. Yeah. So the whole thing there is it's something to be aware of, but all of the other things that are in play today. And I mean I'm a huge fan of what you're doing at Gart, and the other book that I recommend to everyone here to check out is Max Hillebrand's Praxeology of Privacy, which just came out. This would basically be the thing. Go read that. It's fantastic. Austrian Economics Plus. Practical security tips for privacy. It's fantastic. Just released the physical version, so it's really privacy is paramount, and that's the thread that runs through Bitcoin security in my view is keep yourself private, because Bitcoin is inherently not private because the ledger is open, right? But it is pseudonymous. You might have addresses and those things are open, but if no one can tie it to your fiat identity or your government identity, something like this, you can stay private and keep it from being known what is your Bitcoin. And I would definitely agree that that's huge to focus on at the moment.
I would maybe expand it from making Bitcoin private to making your digital life more private, because it's okay if we get there to have a private Bitcoin by default and quantum safe Bitcoin by default, but we still run Apple or a standard Android on our phones and are surveilled through big tech companies. And then the hackers, they don't need to go and hack into their databases. Basically, they can fake an EDR, it's an emergency data request, and they use a compromised email address of a police officer, and they request at Google, just send me all the data on this person, and they hand it over because they have no other way to verify validity of those EDRs. So this gives you like the scope, like, okay, this is not just AI deepfakes, it's people, hackers using AI to find vulnerabilities, to take over email addresses, to generate fake EDRs. Like, generally speaking, anything that you put out online, you go to an e-shop, all the data that's there, it's by now impossible to secure. We used to point fingers at companies that leaked databases of their customers. We might be as well pointing that same finger at ourselves soon, because it's really impossible. I don't know if Jan will agree
Fool
with
me 100 times. Shame on me, right? I guess.
Yeah, I agree 100%. From time to time, I get reports from my colleagues that they were a target of some sort of an attack. One interesting story just happened in ETHCon on a different conference, and I think conferences are a honeypot for scammers. One of my colleagues wanted to talk to someone, to a speaker, and couldn't reach out to him on socials. He was trying on X, but then he thought, okay, let's try Telegram. So I just copy the handle they have on X to Telegram, and okay, he found this person with the profile image and everything. So they connected, started chatting, and then it turned out to be a scammer, and they made him to download some file, and they stole his Telegram account. So this can happen very quickly. So I'd say don't trust, verify, even in the real world, like here at the conference.
if I may, there's a little brochure that the VIP tickets owners received with an insert from Gart about social engineering at conferences. Please give it a little read, maybe today, before the big event, rolls up. It gives you really practical steps and how to enjoy the conference, but with a little bit heightened alertness about what you share with home and how you talk and how you control your information, how you connect with people at the conference and then afterwards. So please read it. It's a tiny insert.
Well, if I can also give another practical tip on the Telegram side of things, the group that's doing a lot of this stuff is from North Korea, and this is well documented. There are others, but right now North Korea is really going at it at the moment. And I know this. First of all, there was someone I was connected to had been hacked and all this, and I knew it had happened already because they told me. And then I get the request from this account, hey, how's it going? Let's catch up, blah blah blah. And so I actually did one of the things that you suggested, Alena, this sort of, hey, what was our last conversation about something like this? I already knew it was a scammer and all. And they tried to make something up, whatever. Okay, so I'm just gonna take it to the next level. So I asked Grok, because Grok is the most accommodating with things like this, to make up a bunch of choice insults to Kim Jong Un. And I asked it to give it to me in Korean, and I pasted it into the chat. And you know what? The block happened so quickly; it was almost instant. Then the funniest thing was, it happened again, right? So it must have been the same scamming group. Someone else reached out. It was someone I wasn't as close to, but hey, how's it going? Can we have a call? Okay, and so I type, hey, yeah, sure, let's do it. I want to do the same thing. And they, before I could do anything, they insulted me in English and blocked me very quickly. So they must have realized that I had insulted their dear leader. And so I would say, if you're suspicious of anyone on Telegram or on the internet, make some Korean insults for Kim Jong Un, and then paste that in and just see what happens. And well, maybe they'll get wise to it or something, but it's a real security control if you can get yourself to be blocked by the scammers, not the other way around.
Those scams are getting increasingly sophisticated. So it's not just like, hey, man, how are you? Let's hop on a call. I received a a fake message from Jimmy, the co-author of the Little Bitcoin book, saying, "Hey, I'm writing a new book. Do you want to talk about it?" So they put it into a living context, right? It's really getting to a point where whatever you see in writing is not trustworthy. And coming back to those Korean hackers, there's a lot of Korean software developers trying to get hired by companies. I don't know if Jan, if you have any experiences with that, but what I've heard is that oftentimes they get onto a project, not delivering maybe greatly, maybe the quality will be improving, and so hopping from one to another project gives them validity, gives them a social recognition. And then, okay, having worked on these 3 open source projects, it will be much easier to get hired to Trezor, for example.
Yeah, this is a very real threat. It hasn't really happened, or at least we don't know about that. Maybe early in the hiring process, but we haven't hired a Korean hacker as far as I know. And in the hiring process, we always try to meet this person in real life, and if possible, make them come to the office from time to time, so that we know the person. And we have this luxury of being a sort of a love brand, at least here in the Czech Republic, so people want to work for us. So we're not short of candidates, luckily.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of businesses or projects that operate this in a distributed manner, and then you need to worry about these things. So, just putting it out there. We did some internal protocols for that. So, when we hire people, we have conversations. We do have a set of little tests, but those tests, like, they may work today, or not anymore, actually. So it's moving so fast.
Got to keep it moving, It's the learning is constant. We have to keep up with our learning. You have to keep your mind right and your mind sharp. So we have time for maybe one maybe fun question for everybody. So here's my fun question. It's not that fun, but what do you think? What would be a security tip from outside the Bitcoin space that we should be adopting here?
Well, okay. Considering I'm still outside of the Bitcoin space, this is really basic and kind of not fun. Enable multi-factor authentication on your accounts everywhere. It helps with exchanges. It helps with email providers, and just do it because it's this little bit of extra friction, but it's so much better than just having an email and password. I mean, I could go down an entire stack, but let's just focus on that one. And use an authenticator app as well, because that is way better than getting it sent to your email address, or even worse, to your SIM card. That was one attack that was happening, was that getting your SIM card swapped, and then they can do whatever they want. So yeah, these authenticator apps, multi-factor authentication, that levels up your digital world, usually just to the point where, someone can't get into your accounts. Very boring. Thank you for that one.
In a general sense, so I've been impersonated quite a bit on Telegram, and I've had 2 very close friends been scammed for an embarrassing amount of sats. And the only defense I have here, if outside of just closing Telegram, is 2-factor. And everybody who would fall for something like this has multiple ways of getting in touch with me. And so, at least in spirit, it's pretty effective.
True.
I have one tip, which is not fun either, but I always recommend using a password manager. I even taught my mom how to use it. It's really simple, and for some, especially non-technical people, it sounds like, oh, this is a nightmare, how can I manage? But it's really easy, and this way you will never reuse your passwords, which is a problem, because once one password is leaked somewhere, then it gets to a database that scammers can use and try to use that password elsewhere. And also, probably when you just remember your passwords, they won't be too hard to brute force. So always please use password managers. These are great tools.
I struggle finding one because we run a training that is packed with real-world security advice. Maybe information compartmentalization. Learn how to protect your information, create circles of trust around you, determine who should know everything about you, probably your spouse, your closest family, your friends are wider, and acquaintances, and make sure that not everyone does know everything about you. I see this a lot around events where people take taxi and yell Bitcoin here and there in front of a stranger. They even show their wallets. They say how much they have on their wallets. I've seen that. And it's okay. I can understand that because there's excitement. People love to share knowledge of Bitcoin, and we should continue doing that. But just being aware of the surroundings, of the situation I'm in, of how much I know about this or that person, and really divide the information on a need-to-know basis. Okay, you only share what that particular person needs to know. You don't lie, you don't invent stuff, but you protect the information, and I think that's a good habit to have in general.
Fantastic. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for having us.